Hello everyone and welcome to Ethics. I am Connor Bromley. I'm joined today by Taff, otherwise known as AltEnding. If you want to search for him on the YouTube, you may actually be watching this video on his channel. So you probably know who he is. And we are here not to bask in the glory of Sunderland's win against Newcastle this past weekend. Though it may come up, it must be said, it may come up during this conversation. But actually we're going to look ahead to our game against Brighton. But also, I think for Sunderland fans, maybe talk a little bit about the AFCON period generally, because a lot's been made of it, a lot of discussion around it, and I think it might be good for us to kind of give our views as to how this could play out for Sunderland. I think if I remember rightly in our hot takes, didn't you make quite a bold prediction about Sunderland in AFCON?
Oh, good God, I did.
I think you said we'd get 10 points.
10 points in AFCON, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So how are you feeling about that right now?
Well, let's imagine we get 3 off Leeds, 1 off. We got 2. When have we gotten 2?
Right. I'll do this for you. I'll go through all the games that concern the AFCON period, and you can work out where we're going to get the points from. So we've got Brighton this weekend. So if we're going to do a bit of a predictor, are we saying 1 there? No.
Well, I'm going to keep track of. A sort of a worst case and a reasonable prediction rather than an optimistic one, because an optimistic one doesn't matter. We'll get all the points we need.
We've got back-to-back home games then against Leeds and Man City. Then we play at Tottenham away. Then we play Brentford away. So they're 2 games within a week. And then we play Everton in the FA Cup, where we won't get any points. And I think the last game, which concerns the AFCON period, potentially, depending on if our players reach the finals and stuff, would be Crystal Palace on the 17th of January at home. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's potentially 6 Premier League games. The reality, though, is that if players like Ronaldo, who aren't expected to go far, they will likely be back for like the Tottenham game on the 4th of January. Because I believe Ronaldo's last game at AFCON is New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. So you would expect he'll probably be back.
He's Mozambique, isn't he?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to say. So I can't even find when Mozambique are playing. But I think the 31st of December is the very last group game.
Yeah. So he should be back for Tottenham, provided Mozambique don't go on a mazy run.
And will Traore for Burkina Faso? They would probably go out as well, don't they?
I think they're actually not that bad. I think they got quite far in the last AFCON.
Okay. Because I think Siddiqui with Congo are one of the favourites. Yeah. They put Senegal out the group games, didn't they? Oh no, they put them out the group games to the World. They put them out the World Cup. So Diarra for Senegal are expected to go quite far. Congo and the hosts Morocco. So that's Talbi, Diarra, and Siddiqui, who will probably not be back until
Palace.
Well, one of those 3 will be back on the. You would have to think maybe the 10th, at the latest the 15th.
Well, in terms of our FA Cup predictions, though, that doesn't really. Our Premier League predictions, that doesn't really help us because.
No, I suppose not. I have us in worst case scenario in AFCON getting 3 points, worst case, and in a sort of marginally optimistic 12. So that all looks like averaging out at less than the 10 I predicted. That was my hot take, yes, 10 during AFCON. But I think we might get a bit less than that now.
I think if I was to really... 8. If I was going to throw my prediction in, I'll say that we'll get none against Brighton, 3 against Leeds, 1 against Man City, 3 against Tottenham, 1 against Brentford, and then are we counting the Palace game in this run?
Yeah.
I think we'll get 1 against Palace. So
that's 9. That's 9.
Yeah, I think 9, and I think we can win 3 of these games and lose the others as well. So win 3, lose 3, or win 2, draw 3, lose 1.
Right. So my hot take still has an outside chance then.
It does have an outside chance. It definitely does have an outside chance. But in terms of, I mean, we kind of went through the AFCON thing there with who's going to be there gone longer. We were expecting, of course, Adingra to be gone, but he isn't. I feel like and if we're just going to maybe have a little segment on Adingra, I feel like Adingra could be a big player for us in this period, because I think he probably will get minutes. I would expect that of all the fringe players that we have, Simon Adingra and Lutrell Getrauda are probably going to be the two players that benefit the most from this AFCON period.
Yeah, I think it is crucial for Adingra. He will get time. But Bris is ruthless. If he's not going to pull his weight defensively, then it would not surprise me to see him be benched, because he's great going forward. I actually think he's probably our most creative winger going forward in terms of skill. And in the last few minutes that he's come on in recent games, he has looked very different. But Bris values defensive control much better. And I think, rightly so, given our low sort of statistical expectations of scoring. It's been really crucial to where we are in the league and the points we've picked up, and always being in a game, being able to nick something. So if he doesn't pull his weight defensively, then it would not surprise me at all to see Rig selected ahead of him on the wing, or even Mayenda. Those two will have more of Bris' faith defensively. So it's a big, big moment for Adingra. He has to take the opportunity he'll get if he gets it, and he has to demonstrate that he's worthy of a spot in this team. Otherwise, he'll be sold in the summer, because there would be no need of him. If Bris isn't going to play him now, and he isn't going to seize his chance and do his job, then he'll be gone in the summer, you would have to think.
Yeah, I would probably agree with that assessment. If we're going to pick a team then for this Brighton game, I'll just kind of go through what I think probably will happen, and I think we'll have... This isn't necessarily what I will do. I think this is what the manager will do. I think you'll go with Roofs in goal. I think you'll have Trey Hume playing left back. I think you'll have Alderete with Ballard and Mukeli. That'll be the back four. It'll be Xhaka and Getrauda, I think, centrally in that midfield. Lefay in the sort of more advanced midfield role. I think on the left, we'll see Romain Mundle. I think on the right, we're either going to see... I don't know if I'm going to go with Adingra on the right, or if I'm going to go with potentially even Trey Hume on the right, just because of the threats that Brighton have on the left wing. Maybe he does go super defensive with that. And then in the middle, Brobby or Isidore, I'm probably going with Brian.
All right. Well, I'm going to put your team to the test. And the way to do this is to see what remains. So give me your back line again.
My back line was... not Ronaldo. I wish it was Ronaldo. It was Trey Hume, Alderete, Ballard, Mukeli.
Mm-hmm. Your midfield pairing, your defensive pairing was
Xhaka and Getrauda.
Okay, so if I take that back four and that midfield pairing, who are your defensive substitutions on the bench?
Would be Cirkin.
He's not made a bench yet.
It will be Cirkin. Cirkin will be on the bench.
Okay.
He's a spare man.
Will he even come on the pitch, given that we had no substitute left back this weekend against the Mags? We had no substitute left back. Cirkin was fit. He was in the stadium. He was in the wider squad, but he didn't make the match day squad.
I think that there is...
We had no left back.
And I get that, but it would not shock me one bit if we are underestimating the planning that's going on, and if we did, for example, see Cirkin start this game or Dan Neil start this game, because I wonder if Cirkin in particular, if it's all been about priming him for this period in this run of games, because we know what the club are like in terms of planning, in terms of being quite meticulous. It would not shock me if they were like, no, Cirkin, it was always part of the plan for Cirkin. We didn't want to risk him ahead of AFCON because he was going to be a big player.
Because we need him now.
Yeah, that wouldn't shock me. So I think we're interpreting it maybe in a more traditional way as to how managers work. But I don't know if we're interpreting it the correct way, because we know the club. I mean, look at what we did heading into the playoffs. It's that sort of thing where we've went, no, we want to plan and make sure we are correctly covered. So I do wonder if there's a bit of that at play.
Do you think Bris starts Cirkin ahead of Hume? Because Hume is not starting a right back. Huh?
I don't know. I think that right now I would sit here and say that it'll be Trey Hume playing left back, but I would not be shocked if it was Cirkin playing at left back, because I just don't think we know. We've talked about this AFCON period and how important it is. I just think it's really hard to second guess what the thought process is heading into this run.
I think you're right, but that is what we're here to try to do, I feel.
That's true. Yeah. But that's
Okay,
why I
so
gave my sort of idea of what I think he will do, which
yeah.
is why I've ended up with Trey Hume on the right wing,
Look,
maybe.
I agree with you. I think that's the natural starting 11, given what we've seen him do. But the more I think about it, the more it just doesn't work. It's too risky because you have no defensive substitution on the bench. And I don't see how you can start a game like that with no substitution defensively on the bench. Although, if Cirkin makes the match day squad, he will be the only defensive substitution because the other one that remains, Hertrauda, you're playing in the midfield.
But that doesn't, to me, that doesn't matter as much because. So, how often do you pick up more than, say, touch wood? I'm touching wood before I say this. More than 2 injuries, though, like in a game, especially in the same sort of area. So, even if Ballard went off injured, touch wood, doesn't happen. I've just touched wood for the whole episode now, I never have to do it again. Ballard goes off injured. Then what happens is Gertruida moves into centre back. It's an internal substitution, and then you put another central midfielder on. I'm not as worried about that because that is the flexibility you kind of need to have.
And he tends not to substitute his defenders. They stay on the pitch the whole game. You just add more of them. So, yeah, one answer would be when we want to go defensive, we simply drop a midfield Gertruida back into the back line, and we sub on a midfielder for a winger or something. Yeah?
Yeah.
So you could start with that, and Cirkin could be the only bench defender or starting. But I don't think he starts ahead of Hume at left back. Okay, fine. But in the same way that I'm quite heavily of the opinion that he doesn't play Tolby and Isidore together because they're weak defensively, I don't think he puts onto the pitch, if he can help it, Cirkin and Neil together. Who, I don't think he puts on. He's so reliant defensively, so cautious. I don't think he puts on 2 untested Premier League players as a defender and a holding midfielder. So I think one of them starts.
Do you actually think one of them?
Because otherwise they both come on as subs, maybe. Or maybe Cirkin doesn't play unless there's an injury. Gertruida drops into the back line. Neil comes on for a winger, maybe. That would work.
I think it's hard because I think as well we are as a fan base almost ended up treating these players like Neil and Cirkin almost like lepers, aren't we? We forget that they were very good players linked with Premier League moves. I actually don't have many fears about those playing games. I get what you're saying about the manager maybe not wanting to put them both together, and I do see that. Does he want to throw Dennis Cirkin and Dan Neil into the same game? Well, fundamentally I don't think he will, because I think but can you see what I mean? I
think the selection is dictated by who are the subs and who might come on in certain scenarios. So, if you start Gertruida, then he would come on. He would fall back into the defensive line, and you would bring Neil on, and Cirkin doesn't get a look in. He's the bench there for an injury. That's it. What do you reckon to that?
I think I could see that happening. I could definitely see that happening. I agree with you. I don't think it'll be Neil. I don't think we'll see Neil, Cirkin and Rig, for example, coming into this team. No way the 3 of them come in and play. I think maybe one of them gets a chance. There's a bit of me that really thinks that he might go with Dan Neil, to be honest. I feel like maybe this is what it's all been about, priming him to bring in. I mean, I was surprised he didn't come on at Man City. I think we were talking on the Raw podcast before, which if people want to check out, they can listen to on the Sunderland Tactics page. But we talked about the fact that he didn't come on against Man City, and that was telling. But we also know, and I keep referring back to this Crystal Palace game, he said that Dan Neil was going to come on to replace Noah Siddiqui in like the 30th minute. So in his head, he clearly looks at Dan Neil as being the closest we have to Noah Siddiqui.
Yeah. 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 And outside of Gertruida being pushed in the midfield, I think he's our best option alongside Xhaka in current circumstance. So, yes. So, I'd be quite happy, and I'm going to make the assumption that you start Mundle at left wing.
Yeah.
And the question is Rig or Adingra on the right. And as you've alluded to, I think that depends who starts, or Hume. I think we're both secretly fans of Hume coming on as a right wing substitute, aren't we?
I think when you look at Brighton having Matoma, and they've got a really good left back as well, whose name's slipped my mind, Dikipye or something. Anyway, left back they brought in this past summer. I just wonder if maybe Minter's on the right. They've got Matoma, who's on the left, and
Yeah.
they've got a lad who I'll find his name because I'll look in their lineup. No, because he didn't play against Aston Villa. De Coupier or something is his name. They got him this past summer, though seemingly he hasn't started the last few games. Or maybe he's injured. I don't know. Anyway, I just wonder if, because we're playing against Matoma, who's obviously such a good player, do they maybe go mega cautious? I wouldn't really want to see that, but I don't know. Hume's done okay when he's played on that right wing spot. What I hate is, I hate him playing the inverted. I hate when he's playing as a right wing back and they're making him go into central midfield because I just think it's weird and it doesn't work. I don't mind it as much. If we played Trey Hume, it's just like in the Getrauda role we're talking about here. Say they went, do you know what, we're going to play Hume in central midfield. Wouldn't hate it as much if his only job was to play central midfield. I just hate asking a player to do two jobs and him not being, in my opinion, particularly good at it in Premier League level.
Yeah, and you saw at Fulham how Silva exposed, that position there, and I think Brighton have the pace and the technical ability to do the same against us. So I don't think he'll play a 5, for that reason. I think it would cause us too much difficulty down that right defensive right hand side. So
I would agree.
that's my hope anyway.
I think it's a 4-3-3. I think what's interesting is this game is actually quite important for Brighton because they lost 4-3 against Villa. They've drawn 1-1, scored a last minute goal to equalise against West Ham at home. Then they've lost 2-0 at Liverpool, which, again, not a great result in the context of us going there and getting a point and Liverpool not being that great. They've got to play us. Then they've got to go away to Arsenal. Then they've got West Ham away, which we've seen they've struggled when they played West Ham at home. So I look at this period and think that this game is the one that Brighton are earmarking because otherwise they could be heading into that West Ham game 6 games without a win. And they obviously is a team that I think should be pushing for the top 6. I'm not saying they'll get there, but I think they have their eyes on sort of the top 6 or 7 in the Premier League.
Yeah.
I think that they have to win this game. I think it's a monumentally important game for them, and I think that could potentially play into our hands a little bit. I wonder if their fans maybe will think, right, we should be beating Sunderland at home, and if we can go there and frustrate the first half an hour, maybe we can. I mean, they're not known as being a vociferous fan base, but maybe you can create a bit of frustration there. But I think this is a really important game for Brighton in the context of their season.
In their last 9 games, they've had 3 wins, and that's come against Leeds, Brentford, and Forest. So they don't look like a side, although they're always pleasing on the eye. They don't look like a side in terms of results who have performed like a top 6 team. If that's who they've beaten in the last 9 games. And the game before that, they won, the 10th game. That was against Newcastle, but they weren't very good against us, so I don't know. So you have to wonder. I mean, that's 4 of their 6 wins. I haven't gone back far enough to see who the other 2 were against, but their recent form is not good. Although they do play in a way that I think will present problems for us. That they have a lot of possession. They have 52% possession. That will probably be higher against us. They make more tackles than most teams. They're 4th in the division for the number of tackles they make, and that's not because they're doing a lot of defending. They're not. They have more ball. And they are 3rd in giving away fouls and penalties. So they're a very aggressive team, and they are 1st. And this is the key to where they are doing that tackling and that pressing and whatnot. They are 1st in the entire division for winning possession in the final third. So if you face that, they are a very aggressive side who will press us. Does that alter your opinion about 4 at the back?
No. I think
fine.
It actually makes me more reason to play 4 at the back. In my opinion, when we saw Sunderland at the start of the season, the first few games, we played, I think the stat was like the least amount of passes from... Robin Roos barely played. He barely played a short pass. I think that, in my opinion, the objective here has to be to bypass the press and just go long over the top. Rely on players like Alderete. We saw Alderete, nearly set Isidore up at the weekend. In my opinion, it's got to be about really concise, good long balls into the right areas. That's why Brian Brobby, to me, makes a lot more sense in this game in getting, somebody there who can make Lewis Dunk worried, and because obviously he's a very good player in the air. I presume he's playing this weekend.
I think we are still the team that moves the ball.
Lewis Dunk's suspended, actually. He's not playing.
Oh, what a terrible shame. So is Gomez on their right wing, so that De Creeper will play as well. I think we're still the team that moved the ball forward from winning it fastest in the entire division. There is a nice... I wonder if I can get this up in time. There is a nice graphic that was put out by the OPTA analyst. I'm pretty sure I can get this. I'll keep talking about that.
Well, I shall talk while you're loading it, so we can seamlessly transition to it. Interestingly, against Liverpool at the weekend, they lined up with Rutte up front. So Danny Welbeck came on, but I think that's interesting because that basically means they lined up without a traditional number 9. They went with essentially a false 9, which I think's curious. I don't know if they would necessarily look at Sunderland and do that. I mean, if you're going to look at a comparable game, it probably is that 2-1 win against Newcastle. It's probably the most similar game they've played this season. And in that game, they lost on possession. Newcastle had more of the ball, which obviously if you watch the game this past weekend, you'd say that was surprising because Newcastle were very willing to sacrifice.
Yeah, they were. Newcastle dominate possession as well. So maybe we don't need to worry about that as much as we did because it turned out very strange at the weekend in terms of possession. It, like 70-odd%, didn't we? Yeah, this is that Opta analysis. So this is zones of control. The white areas are reasonably neutral. The pink area is the opponent control, and the purple area we control. So what's quite clear here is where Sunderland play their ball. We protect the goal area. We already know that we force teams wide because we're dominant in the air and the cross, and we're quite happy to do that. And we also know that most goals we concede come from outside the box. And if you look at the 6-yard box and the main goal mouth area, absolutely nobody gets a look in there. So we're pretty solid there. But it's also very clear from the white areas that when we release the play, we are still, as you said, that team that moves the ball from back to front faster than anyone else in the division. We ping it to those wingers. Interestingly, that Talby has been more successful at getting down that wing than elsewhere. So yes, I mean, if they are a pressing side, and they are, they regain possession more than any other in the final third, then maybe that does play into our strength and our style, and maybe we can bypass that. I think there's another area where we could win some crucial ball as well. They sometimes in their press, they sometimes when they play out because they're quite aggressive and fluid, they sometimes only play with a single defensive pivot. Sometimes how Xhaka appears to be the only one back with the ball. I think we're really very good at creating options and places, but they sometimes play with only a single defensive pivot. And if they do, then I think that there is an opportunity to rob the ball high up the pitch for them. And we're no slouches ourselves at final third recoveries. So that is a possibility for us. But that means having Lefay in the 10 role to do that, because I think he's the key man to rob that ball. So we've got our left winger in Mundle. We've got Lefay in the 10, I assume. Who do you play on the right?
Well, I think that's a big question, isn't it? That's the most important question because Traore's made that position his own. So you're either looking at Mayenda potentially being a shout for it, but we've not seen much of him. I mean, I would think it's fair to say Adingra's probably ahead of him in the pecking order in the sense that he's came on a little bit more. Naturally, I'm looking at Simon Adingra going, well, this is your position. And I think against his former club, maybe he has a point to prove. I don't know if the club buy into rhetorics like that or narratives, but feels to me like why not give him a go? But I don't think Reggie Slippery looks at players and goes, why not give them a go? I think he looks and goes, I am picking this team because I think it'll win. I don't think he goes, oh, I will just chuck someone in because why not? So I think Adingra, for me, that's who I think he'll start, but I wouldn't be shocked if he goes with someone else. I wouldn't be shocked if we're looking at Eliza Mayenda on there because I've been kind of shocked that we haven't seen that much of him so far this season.
Well, if you drop up the Brighton pivot picture there, this has come somebody else has made this graphic, but I find it an interesting one because it shows you the staggered. Brighton are playing in the yellow here against Arsenal, but it shows you when they are in possession, they'll push their fullbacks up, they stagger their pivots, and sometimes you can see the first of the two pivots there is running, upfield, whereas the second more defensive pivot is walking and going to hold his position. So there will be space here, and if you think about putting Mayenda on the right, I mean Mayenda's or even tucked in on the right to rob the ball, it has a lot of appeal because Mayenda can rob balls quite well. And I think putting Lefay in the 10 role on the edge of that circle as well, with Broby ahead of him, or maybe even Wilson, I think it's a really good opportunity to try and steal the ball from that sometimes one defensive pivot or two, because there's a lot of space down that flank and in behind against, what will it be? Van Hecker and if it won't be Dunk, I'm not sure who it will be. So you can see there's a lot of space there with which, if we can rob that ball in the middle of the park from their pivots when they're in possession, that we will get space. So you might be tempted to tuck in Mayenda on the right wing because of his ability to do that and battle away with the ball. But I think if you play Mayenda, you don't play Broby. And how tempted are you to play Wilson if you look at their fullbacks, you look at the space behind and the gap in that midfield. If we rob that ball, you're going to want Wilson running in behind, aren't you?
Yep, I would agree with that. I think it's interesting. We've definitely got some interesting decisions to make, and I think Brighton are an interesting team because they're so wildly inconsistent as well. I mean, I was kind of looking through the results, and I've clicked off the. Oh no, there they are. So if we go through the recent results, they've lost at Liverpool. They've drawn against West Ham, where they scored a late goal to equalise. They've lost 4-3 against Aston Villa, where they were 2-0 up and ended up losing 4-3. They beat Forest away 2-0. They beat Brentford at home 2-1. I think Brentford missed a late penalty in that game, so could have drew it. Palace, they've drawn 0-0. That's a derby game, as you can see by the XGs are very low. Leeds, they hammered 3-0. They lost against Man United 4-2. They beat Newcastle at home, but didn't create much. Only 0.9 XG in that one. Drew away at Wolves, which is a bad result. Only 0.9 XG in that one. Beat Chelsea 3-1. However, Chelsea were down to 10 men. They were 1-0 down. Chelsea got a man sent off. Drew 2-2 with Tottenham. They were 2-0 up and threw that away. Drew 2-2. Bournemouth away. They lose 2-1. And then we're in August. They beat Man City 2-1 at home. That was a really good performance. I watched that. They lost away against Everton. They drew with Fulham. Now, what I'm seeing there is a team that is just wildly inconsistent and also can in some games be defensively quite strong and in other games can be defensively chaotic, and can also on the flip side of that be the other way. They can be attackingly really weak but defensively really weak as well at times. I think they're a really hard team to sort of gauge.
Well, they concede a lot of goals, that's for sure. They're in the top 10, but in the top 10, 7 of the top 10 have conceded far fewer goals than them, and noticeably fewer goals than them. And if you take out Lewis Dunk, who is suspended, then I'm not sure who plays next to him. Veltman, maybe, or Coppola, I'm not sure. But I think there is an opportunity to steal that ball in the midfield and get in behind them. And I'm increasingly fancying Wilson to start in that capacity against a defence that is leaky and has lost its captain in centre half. So, I mean, I think there is an opportunity there. This is a tough game. They are very aggressive, but we are solid defensively, and they leak goals, and we're quite clinical. And as you pointed out on that Raw podcast, XG, people worry about that, and I do. I worry about that, and you keep trying to persuade me to worry less. That you talk about the idea that we don't play in the way that XG measures, and actually we're probably better than that reflects. So there are chances here. We have a chance, I think.
Well, I think as well on the XG thing, what's interesting is when I watch Sunderland, sometimes there is games we've played this season where I've looked at it and our XG has been low, and I've watched the game and thought we looked threatening and looked like scoring, and I find it sometimes. I mean, that, for example, when we went to Liverpool away, I think Liverpool won the XG battle in that game. But actually, if we were to think about that game, who had the best chances in the game?
Thing to say.
Yeah. But who actually had the best chances in the game? Well, it was Sunderland who had the best chances. And I just don't think that I think XG wants to measure the game in a certain way, and it means that teams like Sunderland who don't sort of comply to what football necessarily has been over the last 10 years really get kind of looked badly at. I mean, last season, I don't think we were great on the XG numbers, were we, in the Championship? I don't think we were, top 4 where we actually finished.
No. I think the best chance of the weekend against the visitors was Wilson Isidore's chance.
Yeah.
Which is the clearest threat on goal. But I think, we lost on XG, apparently, despite that being the one very clear chance.
I think we actually won by 0.04 XG. I think we had 0.29 and then 0.25. But how did they get 0.25 XG? What did they create in the game to give them 0.25 XG? And this is often what I look. I mean, opening day of the season, I watched the Leeds. They beat Everton 1-0. And Leeds came out with 2.8 XG. And yeah, they had a penalty, which is worth 0.8 or something. If you watch that game, Leeds never looked like scoring a goal.
Yeah.
So how is it measured? This is my issue with it, is that I think it's a bias towards teams that play in the way that XG wants you to play. And I think the way XG wants you to play is kind of like that Pep Guardiola passy
ball on the floor
football. Because
clear chances in the half spaces.
Look at Leeds on the XG table in the Premier League. Leeds should be 7th or something stupid. Clearly, I've watched a lot of Leeds this season. They are not the 7th best team in the Premier League, as XG would want you to think. So they must be playing in a way that the model in whatever XG uses likes. Therefore, they get overvalued. In Sunderland, constantly by XG. I mean, the Opta table had Sunderland getting relegated last season from the Championship. The Opta table had us getting relegated from the Premier League this season. The Opta table gave us a 20% chance of winning the Derby game at the weekend. And all the underlying data is constantly, all season, underestimated Sunderland, which suggests to me that the underlying data can't properly grade what Sunderland is.
Well, I mean, we might have to repeat this in propaganda this week, but I was looking at the Opta table and just those sorts of things. And what do you think Opta says Sunderland's percentage chance of making the top 10 is? Well, actually, I'll tell you that. It's 28% chance. It's not bad, making the top 10.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
What do you think Tottenham's chances are, according to Opta?
55.
50%. You're doing very well at this game.
Yeah.
What do you think Newcastle's chance of making the top 10 are?
Far higher, 70.
Yeah, bang on. Yeah. You've done your homework here. Right?
I haven't done my homework, but I know what they are modelling.
So Newcastle, 4 points below us, abysmal form away from home, look like the worst team we've played, have 3 times more chance of finishing in the top 10 than we do, according to Opta data collection. It's bizarre.
Yeah. But even it's taken until I sent you this yesterday. It's taken until this point right now of us winning that game against Newcastle for us to slip under 2% chance of relegation. We were sat on 20 points at the start of December, and they were still giving us a 15% chance of going down. It's because their models weight the fact you're a newly promoted team against you when they're doing all these sort of statistical analysis. But I think it fundamentally boils down to they don't measure what individual teams are capable of. Because if you look at set pieces with Sunderland, we don't concede many and we do score them. But they mark that the same as if we were a team like me and you playing football with our friends. XG does not have a model that interprets that. It's the same model, you know what I mean? It takes no interest in what the players are, who the individual players on the field are, how they play together, how well they've known each other, da-da-da-da-da. Doesn't take into account things like mentality, which Sunderland has, which is why it can be used in an interesting way when you look at all stats together. And I think it is a valuable thing to use in that. I mean, I've used it talking about Brighton, looking at their individual games. I think it can be useful. But I think that fundamentally, when I'm looking at Sunderland, I've looked at it for 18 months, and the models are constantly low down on how we play, which suggests to me that the models just don't know how to interpret Sunderland, and are undervaluing the things that we do well and overvaluing the things that we do badly. There we go. That's an XG rant for you.
Yeah. Your favourite topic. I like seeing you go on it. Yeah.
It's just.
I know a lot of people agree with you.
I don't. I would say though that I'm not totally against it. I'm against it in the sense that I think it needs to be reworked, but I think it still is a useful stat.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people think it's a useless stat and it shouldn't be used. I think it should. I think it is an interesting thing to look at. I just don't.
How do you rate our chances at the weekend then? Aggressive opposition, biggest turnover of the ball in the final third, but they play with space behind them and the opportunity to rob that ball in the midfield and run into it or behind it. And their captain and centre half is out.
Shall I give you a real reason to be pretty optimistic about this game?
Yeah.
The real reason why I think Sunderland should go into this game thinking they can win, never mind draw, is that if you look at our defeats this season, right, we've lost against Burnley, which, to be honest, I feel like we should just wipe away from the record because it was a weird game. We didn't have our centre-backs. I don't think Burnley were particularly better. It was just a bad game of football. We lost it. It was a coin flip. Then we played Man United where we set up tactically incorrect. And I think it's fair to say we've learned from that. We lost against Fulham, where I think their manager tactically is quite fluid and will change things to try and combat Sunderland, and it worked for them.
Yeah.
And we've lost against Man City, which was a weird game because of
they were brilliant.
It was the third game of the week, and they played really well. Now, why I think that Sunderland can look at this game and think they can win is that Brighton have a distinct style of play that is there for all to see. So they play games pretty much in the same way, particularly at home. They are very aggressive, very high pressing, leave a lot of spaces, but are also quite good at what they do. Because of that, we've got a full week to prepare for the game. I believe that Regis will have a tactical plan to deal with everything they do, and if it's executed correctly, then we should have a chance of winning the game. Because I think one of the weaknesses of Brighton is that their identity and what they do is so obvious when you watch them. They play in a certain way that we'll be able to pick holes and go, well, we know that their right back does this and their left back does this and their central midfielders do this, so we can do this to stop that happening. And I think that's why these sorts of teams that we play will have this clear identity. I think we have a chance of beating them because we've got geniuses behind the scene that
you're starting Isidore then.
I don't know what I'm doing because I'm intelligent enough to know that they're intelligent, but I'm not intelligent enough to know what the actual plan should be.
Okay. Well, I mean, you've persuaded me. I have written down 2-1 Sunderland. Isidore first goal scorer. That's what. And the only unresolved point is, so I agree. Yeah, I think we have a chance here if we play the right way, and if we have the right personnel. And I think that I agree with you. I agree with myself. I don't think Cirkin or Neil play at the same time or start together. I think, Hume at left back, Hertrauder in the midfield, maybe Neil. Or maybe Neil comes on if we're defending a lead and Hertrauder drops into a back. I don't know. And I'm unresolved about the right wing. Adingra for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go Adingra.
Well, Nordy's pretty strong behind him. Maybe we could cope with that.
Could you put Rig out there on the right?
He'd be better defensively. He's got less going forward, but if you play Isidore up front, you're not really after crosses. You're after putting the ball in behind. So,
but
maybe.
Also when you put on
what about Mayenda?
You put this on before. Well, I like Mayenda and I haven't played right. So you put this on before.
Uh-huh.
So if Brighton are in possession, then if we have, say, Rig playing on the right wing, he can also play sort of centrally. Does that mean that we can win this midfield battle here by having potentially 4 men against their 2, if that's the way that they're playing?
Yeah, you can. And that's the temptation to have Mayenda there because he's so hard to knock off the ball. He's really good at robbing it. and he might be a better person to rob ball and move upfield with it than Rig. I don't know. And Wilson and Mayenda have often played well together.
Oh yeah, I'm on that team. I'm on team.
So,
we haven't seen Wilson and Mayenda play together this season yet, I believe.
Well, you have convinced me that we're in for an exciting weekend.
I think we've got a chance. We've got a lot of, as well, you've got intangible things. Sunderland are confident. Sunderland are, they've coming off the back of a derby win. There's a lot of things, Brighton not in great form right now, have lost their last home game in a pretty pathetic way where they were winning 2-0 and ended up losing 4-3. There are things and reasons to think that Brighton maybe aren't in a great place and Sunderland are in a decent place. They've got a lot of players out. Beliebers away at AFCON, centre-backs. Webster, who is the cover centre-back, he's injured. Dunk, suspended. Mitoma's just coming back from an injury. I don't think that we're playing Brighton at their best self. It's not to say they can't hurt us. Brighton can win this game. They've got a lot of good players. It's
they
not
could,
going into it
sure.
blind and thinking we're going to win the game, but I think there's every reason for us to feel like we can hurt them and get something from them.
And the players who do come in because of AFCON I'm surely going to be super motivated to play their best, because this is their moment. True. This is their chance. Because if they don't play well, then they end up being replaced in the January transfer window, and they'll be gone in the summer.
Yeah, or in January.
Yeah.
So
well, that is interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think we've went 40 minutes there, a bit longer than our usual previews, but there was a bit to talk about. We didn't even mention the visitors that much throughout it.
No.
So we might come back with another video in the week. We haven't decided yet if we're going to do another one, which maybe has our final reflections on the derby weekend, but we'll see how we get on.
Whisper it, but there's still a lot of propaganda that they are spewing out.
Yeah, there is a lot of propaganda, and also we appreciate all the kind messages as well about propaganda this week. We've had a lot of positivity, a lot of love for propaganda, which is good, because for a stolen idea from the square ball, it's which is a Leeds fanzine, it's done quite well for us. I think a lot of people are enjoying propaganda, and I think, to be fair, there isn't really anyone doing it on the market. Nobody really looking at what the opposition are saying.
No, it is a good opportunity to sort of put the record straight sometimes, and to have fun every week. I think when we do reviews and when we do previews, it can all be a bit too much, tactics and a bit serious. So I like the light-hearted nature of propaganda, the ability to laugh at others. It's something we need to do. Yeah,
I'm curious to see if we make it on Leeds as the square ball propaganda when they do it, and they might whinge at us for stealing that.
If we don't win the return, if we get beaten in the return fixture against the Mags, I'd be deeply disappointed if we don't appear in some sort of propaganda for them.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think
we're not doing a job properly if that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I would agree. Hopefully we do end up on some reels and whatnot of people saying, look at these two idiots. Though I would say we're pretty, I'm certainly, I think, level-headed and would not go into that derby game saying stupid things like we'll win 5-0 and stuff, which a lot of the rhetoric was going into this game, the game this past weekend. You're maybe a bit more heart on sleeve.
You're referring to my combined 11, aren't you?
Well, yes, that, yeah, I can see that.
Well, let's see.
Yeah, let's see. That's a long way to go. Let's just enjoy being the Derby Day Kings of the North, as the Premier League table that we looked at in propaganda said. Anyway, thanks everyone for watching. We'll catch you soon, no doubt, for another video. And yeah, like, subscribe, all that good stuff.